What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over which SMG I think is best in Fortnite Chapter 7, because with the recent update, SMGs have definitely become the meta. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and comment down below which of these SMGs you prefer. And if you guys would like to use my code in the shop when getting anything, it is EvolvedJake, just like my channel name is, and it is underneath the webcam at all times. So with last week's update vaulting the Deadeye AR and making it so the red dot ARs are projectile past 100 meters, I think the SMGs are definitely going to be the best weapons. They have been getting buffed over the course of Chapter 7, and now with the Deadeye gone, they just completely shine. So we have the Flex SMG, the Holo Rush SMG, and then the Suppressed SMG was also brought back. And even with the SMG, or the Suppressed SMG being buffed, it still is so much worse than the other two choices that I don't really think there's much point in talking about it. And it doesn't really do anything exceptionally well aside from being suppressed, I guess. But that doesn't really make up for it just being a worse weapon for eliminating opponents. So we're only going to be talking about the Flex SMG and the Holo Rush SMG. And both of these weapons are incredible. They're both very good S tier weapons, I would say, at the moment. And you aren't really going to go wrong regardless of which one you choose or which one you prefer. But there may be a clear preference you have. I know I definitely have a clear preference for the Flex SMG over the Holo. And the main difference that a lot of people will likely have their opinion swayed by is going to be that the Holo Rush SMG has a sight and then the Flex does not. So if you really hate third-person weapons, you may prefer the Holo, but I would highly recommend giving the Flex a chance. I know a lot of, especially newer Fortnite players, hate using any sort of third-person weapon with bloom or not having the sight on it. But I think if you give the Flex a chance and put the time in with it, you have a weapon with much higher potential. And while the Flex SMG is third-person, it does not have a lot of bloom when aimed in. The spread is kind of tight, so you have a very accurate weapon at the ranges you're going to be using it in. And it also has like basically no movement penalty when you're aimed in, which is also very important to me personally because I strafe aim a lot. And that's one of the things that like throws me off most with using the third-person weapons is that a lot of times you don't want to be strafe aiming, you don't want to be moving while shooting because then you're making your weapon, you know, less accurate. But with the Flex, it doesn't have that much bloom to begin with, and then you also aren't penalized that much for moving. So you're allowed to, you know, remain mobile while spraying your weapon. And also, since the Holo does have a sight, you would kind of expect it to be the better long-range option because that's usually how it goes, or like the better medium to long range option since we're talking about SMGs. But I actually feel the opposite of this is true because the Flex gets improved damage range and just straight up damage when you aim in with it. So you won't notice the damage fall off as bad with the Flex. And since the accuracy is really good, as I said, you can still land shots pretty consistently with the Flex if your aim is decent with third-person guns. So it's kind of counterintuitive. You would think just on paper, okay, the third-person one would be the better close medium range one, and then the Holo would be the better medium to long range one because it has a sight. But I feel like the opposite of this is kind of true. The Flex is better at range because of that alternate fire mode. If you guys didn't know how the Flex works, if you hip fire it, you have a faster fire rate, but when you aim in with the Flex, you have a slower fire rate, but increased damage. So you have like a very versatile, basically two weapons in one, depending on whether or not you're aiming. And I feel like this is kind of the best of both worlds. Either way, if you're trying to fight really long range, none of these weapons will really be ideal, so it's probably not going to go well for you. But with how the game currently plays out, with the removal of the Deadeye, making the MK projectile, and adding in the hunting rifle, I feel like long range fights aren't really something you want to be in anyways. With this shift in the meta, I think the game has gone much towards like close and medium range, just dominating the game. And regardless of which AR I'm using, even the Enforcer AR, it's good at long range and probably the best long range option in the game right now. Dealing with that, like shooting shots and trying to tap fire with it versus people having the hunting rifle that can just like, you know, one shot you to the head. It's not a fight I really want to participate in. So I really want to avoid medium to long, I want to avoid long range as much as possible right now. And so the SMGs being bad at long range doesn't really deter me. With both of these SMGs, I want to play pretty aggressive, push enemies as much as possible, and kind of avoid those stalematey mid to long range fights because not only does my gun not do that well, but the hunting rifle excels at that. So if you're not using a hunting rifle for those fights, you're running the risk of just getting, you know, instantly one shot or taking a lot of damage on a single shot. So I try to avoid those stalemate situations as much as I can. Because of this, the Shockwave Grenade and Flowberry Fizz combo pairs incredibly good with these SMGs to allow you to be aggressive and just keep the fight in ranges that are ideal for you and instantly get out of fights that aren't ideal for you. And the fact that you can aim in while in air in Chapter 7 allows you to push people and kind of jump on people in what normally would be a 50-50. You know, if you're full HP and the opponent's full HP, just jumping on them is a very risky play and is often going to create like a pretty random close range fight. So you wouldn't want to do that. But if you get good at, you know, Flowberry Fizz shockwaving on somebody while spraying them from the sky while you're traveling to them, you end up landing on an opponent that's really weak. Like, you get your opening tags that way, you get pressure on them immediately that way, and you avoid the fight that's really stalematy and really bad for your gun. So these pushes are going to be what really makes the SMG work. And I think that personally, for me, I think hitting shots while I'm in air shockwaving on somebody with the Flex SMG feels a lot better than it does the Holo. Just the third person weapon feels better to me in this situation. I feel like the Holo is like kind of too zoomed in, and these situations can be like very chaotic because your character is moving through the air really quickly. And I don't really know how to describe it, and it is just entirely preference. But the third person gun, the Flex, just feels much better for this. And so I really prefer the Flex SMG when it comes to shockwaving on people. And since I kind of said that's a very important thing that kind of enables the SMG playstyle, that's something that really sways me towards wanting to use the Flex. That is a move I want to be taking advantage of as much as possible, and the Flex feels better to me in that situation. You could definitely feel differently, but another reason why I think it is not only just like third person versus first, but as I touched on earlier, the Flex hits harder and shoots slower while aimed in, right? So if I'm shockwaving on somebody and shooting them while I'm in the sky, I have the slower fire rate version, and so I'm hitting a few shots kind of hard and not wasting all my ammo, right? Because I'm shooting kind of slow in this situation. And that's good because I want to land on this person and then still have my SMG ready to go. Whereas the Holo Rush, you don't have this alternate fire rate. So even when you're aimed in, you shoot incredibly fast, and at range, you do very minuscule damage. And as you're shockwaving in on them, there's going to be shots you fire that aren't good range for the Holo. So I feel like a lot of times when I do this with the Holo, not only am I missing more because the first person feels weirder to me in this situation than third, but I'm often landing on somebody with little to no ammo left in my mag, and I'm doing very minuscule damage because a lot of these shots are at like longer range. So it's not only just an aim thing, but how the weapons perform, I feel like just the Flex does better here. The time I really do appreciate the sight most with the Holo Rush is going to be fights around cover. If you're kind of playing cover showing very little, and the opponent is showing very little, just maybe the top of their head, the Holo Rush would definitely be better. The sighted weapon would definitely be better. But as I kind of touched on, if you're playing really aggressive with mobility, you're going to avoid those fights naturally. The Flex also has a much better reload speed, which doesn't sound like the biggest deal, but it is actually one of the biggest reasons why I prefer the Flex. With the Holo Rush SMG in medium range fights, I feel like I am constantly reloading and constantly running out of ammo without doing very much damage to the enemy. Because as I touched on already, it shoots incredibly fast. It does very little damage at range. So you empty your mag very, very quick. And then the reload speed just feels pretty slow to me. And with the recent update, Fortnite did improve the mag size on both the Holo Rush and the Flex. So the Flex is 40 and the Holo Rush is 35, which 35 is good. But because of how fast it empties the mag and how little damage it does at range, even if you think the sight makes your gun better in medium range fights, like you feel more accurate that way, a lot of times you're just going to get damage on people and then need to reload, and then they're going to be able to shockwave away or maybe even wingsuit away as you're reloading. Whereas the Flex, that slower fire rate and higher damage, makes it to where your sustained fire when aimed in is actually incredibly long. And then even when you do run out, you reload incredibly quick, which is perfect for when you're trying to push people or fight people medium range. You know, I can like spray somebody with the Flex and then shockwave on them and still have ammo ready to go, whereas the Holo Rush I might not. When I'm spraying cars, the Flex is so much better because of this faster reload. And just chaotic, you know, fast-paced situations, the faster reloading gun really matters here. When the alternative, the amount of time you're firing the Holo Rush compared to how long it takes to reload just feels really out of line for me. And if you play with it, you probably get what I'm saying. I like the Holo Rush SMG. It's a fun gun to beam people with, but the more I used it, the more I just felt like, oh my gosh, I'm constantly reloading this weapon. So reload speed might not sound like the biggest deal. It's not like its reload is horrible, but with how the weapons play, I think the reload speed can be something that tips it over. As I said, both guns are very good and I enjoy both of them. So very small things actually, you know, decide my choice here in terms of which is best. So that's why I think the Flex SMG is better than the Holo. A lot of it is preference. Both are really good, but I think using one of these SMGs and playing aggressive and playing fast-paced probably fits the meta better right now than trying to play with the MK as if it's a Deadeye or trying to play with the Enforcer at really long range. I think if you get good with these SMGs, you get good playing aggressive, you're going to put a lot of pressure on enemies and make it very hard for them to play the game. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, found it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you would like to see more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.